Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have to start by thanking Emil, Brian, for laying a good foundation for us, and Mats for your book tips. I'm going to read that for sure. So what you're going to hear next is probably a version of that book in a more messed up way. So let's go.
Yes. Okay, so many large organizations are facing two major changes. The first one is driven by regulatory demands and a changing risk landscape.
And the second is driven by the digital transformation and the agile ways of working that comes with it. And most organizations struggles with combining this in a good way, but it's necessary to make this work.
Yes, so in this session, we will address common challenges and what to do about them, both from a GRC perspective and an agile perspective.
So we don't only share an interest in speaking at conferences like this, we also share an interest in outdoor activities, like mountain climbing, for example.
Yes, and speaking at conferences, we have different perspectives. This is also reflected in the mountains, in how we actually manage risks. From my perspective, I secure that we have proper gear, a good guide, and a good insurance policy.
Sometimes I think we have a little bit too much of that stuff. We should really focus on the challenge ahead of us instead.
Yeah, and we can agree on one objective, and it's actually to reach the top and also have fun while doing it. My name is Emelie, and I work as a director at FCG. It's a GRC consultant firm where I help our clients navigate in a complex and changing regulatory environment.
And I'm Magnus, and I'm the CEO of a company called Solidify, and our objective is to help enterprises ease their software development pains. So let's head back, way back. I am sure nobody has missed that the digitalization that's going on for quite some time. But if you really think of it, if you look back, they talked about something called the software crisis in the late 60s and early 70s. So, and the reason for that was that a lot of large IT projects back then failed. And there was a lot of books written about this at this time and articles, but there was no silver bullet at that time. Then it took like almost 30 years until this showed up in 2001, the Agile Manifesto, written by a number of people from the software industry that just got tired of how things were run and decided to try to write down the essence of what's important when trying to write complex software. So it's a good thing. And then from that, it evolved. We got the simple methods, like Scrum, for example. Super simple to learn. You can learn it easily in 10 minutes, at least intellectually. It's like just 3 roles or something like that, 5 artifacts, number of ceremonies. Super easy, but not that hard, not that easy to actually do in practice, especially in a large organization if you have a lot more complexity that you need to manage. So from that, we now got this, a beast, Safe 6. You have to watch yourself when you say that, especially if you're Swedish. Really dangerous. Maybe they had a PR consultant that gave it that name. So it's a beast. And many of you have probably seen Safe in large organization. You know, banks, insurance companies love this stuff. To be true, it's hated by hardcore agilists. Nobody really loves it in that crowd. But even if I have some doubts myself, I think this is what we need to actually marry the worlds, the GRC world and the world I come from.
Okay, a short background of governance, risk, and compliance. And it has increased the demands. And it's also been regulated very much due to all the financial scandals. And it's probably not over yet, because I think we can find new ways of doing things wrong. And there are different frameworks for governance on risk and compliance, but the most commonly known is the COSO Cube, the COSO framework. And it's used worldwide by big, large enterprises. And it's also some of the principles, or all the principles, are used by the regulations.
Yes. So, you see, we have different backgrounds. And as you can imagine, we have different perspectives on this. But is there a common view for us?
Do you think we can find one?
Yeah, let's try.
Yeah.
So, I think we can agree on it's all about the customer. We need that focus.
Yeah, and from GRC perspective, we have quality, reliability, and support, all those to provide stability and trust towards our customers.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, but we shouldn't forget about things like performance, customer experience, and customer satisfaction. That's also crucial.
But Magnus, could we end up in dilemmas and misconceptions? A common misconception from GRC perspective is that agile ways of working inherently weakens control. For example, segregation of duties. You constantly break against this.
Yeah, but we have much better controls nowadays that actually help us reduce the same risk as segregation of duties is meant to reduce. But you don't understand them.
Okay.
Let's talk about change management as a fact. Because if we use your always working with like cab meetings and manual handovers when delivering new versions of software, it will slow us down and we'll be dead in like 5 years.
Okay, but look at the last week news. Actually, the huge bank, Swedbank, got the penalty due to not following their change management process.
Okay. Yeah, I read that memo from FSA too, but it also mentioned that they were lacking monitoring. And that's crucial for an empowered agile team nowadays, to have good monitoring.
Okay, I see. But what about traceability? You never document anything.
Yeah, but you don't know where to look for or what to look for. We have plenty of it.
Okay, but maybe it could be the way that you don't understand how to explain that for me.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, so we can agree on that there are many dilemmas. But can it be fixed?
Yeah, I think so. Let's try.
That's right. Yeah. Okay, let's dig into GRC from an agile perspective, starting with governance.
So this might sound like a really stupid question, but what is actually governance?
Oh, it's not a stupid question because there are no conclusive answer to that. But it's how the company or organization operates within. You have some key elements in governance. It's about roles and responsibilities, mandates, ethics, reporting structure, and also risk and compliance. And in a traditional governance structure, you have this chain of command. So, could this actually slow down or fail the agile transformation?
Yeah, I think you might be onto something there, because if you look at the CEO perspective, you probably love the things you hear about agile ways of working and focus on the customer and deliveries, because that is what you need to be able to keep up with the changing world and the pace that you experience there. But at the same time, as a CEO, you want to have the nice, cozy feeling of safety and security, that what is given by the governance, risk, and control frameworks and processes. So this really needs to line up.
Yeah. And I think, or experienced by myself in an agile transformation, that it's really common that you get stuck in the middle. Because It's not new people coming into the agile transformation. It's the same that have the habits from a traditional chain of command. And if you're just adding more layers of decision making and controls, as you hear, SAFE has really clear governance structure. But if you're not letting the old chain of command go, there can be a problem, because the people will seek prioritization and decision making by their managers. So you need to redefine the role of a manager.
Yeah, I think another common problem is that you get stuck in the transformation itself, because with huge processes like this, like Scaled Agile Framework, organizations tend to get stuck in the focus of the process itself, and they keep that forgetting the focus on the customer and what their actual objective is, and that's a problem. So while we were discussing this and the need of a shift in culture, why is this so hard, we asked ourselves.
Yeah, and we therefore decided to do some research. We looked into companies, large companies that we know are transforming their business into agile. And we looked at their job ads, both from a GRC perspective and an agile perspective.
So we did this by looking at about 100 examples of job ads that you can find on public websites, large companies, the companies Emelie mentioned. And what we did was we looked at both traditional GRC roles and we looked at agile roles. Just to see what we could find there.
Yeah, it was really interesting. None of the GRC roles, the typical GRC roles, actually mentioned that you shall have awareness of agile or know about agile frameworks. And also vice versa. The agile roles didn't mention anything about governance, risk, and compliance awareness.
There was actually one example that we found that was an exception. But when we looked into it, it was actually a big company, but it was born as a networking organization, agile from birth. And for one of their compliance rules, they actually mentioned that agile awareness was crucial. So one exception.
Yeah. So just by adding new frameworks into old governance framework could give you a risk of not giving you this fast-paced company that you aim for.
Yeah. When I think of it, to keep a traditional organization after an agile transformation, it's like, if you think of it, if you're computer geeks in here, what you should keep of the traditional structure is like a modern Linux distribution. Just the core parts, like the crucial parts, that will give you stability to build great services on top of it.
Okay, so let's leave governance and look into risk management. Many large organizations today have established risk management framework, and it's actually regulated for the financial industry. And the companies use the framework, of course, to have proper risk mitigation in place to protect their customers' interest, but also the success of the company. So, for example, you can perform a risk analysis before a decision making, a project initiation, or a large change. As you can hear, risk analysis is performed in a traditional way of governing the company.
So if you are transforming the ways of working in a company to go in a more agile direction, then of course these processes need to adapt as well. Otherwise, we are on a dangerous journey, I think.
Yeah.
So I think there is a general misconception, and that is that agile ways of working is similar to uncontrolled risk-taking.
Yeah, but I actually read an article last week that stated that risk management tends to be informal in agile ways of working. maybe they are right, or?
No, I won't agree on that. Because if you look at what agile actually means in practice, then risk is like in the center of it and how to deal with it. So what you actually do is breaking down large risk into small, tiny ones that you can manage. And it's also built into most agile frameworks that you should plan for risk ahead. And yeah, you know bad stuff will happen to you. So it's also about planning for failing and learning from it so you can get better. So I would say no to that.
Okay, but is there a chance that if you don't adapt your risk management framework, that you don't capture the relevant risks?
Yeah, this is a great risk, I would say. That retrofitting controls, try to be a little bit lazy and use whatever controls you have and try to, like Lego pieces that don't fit together, try to squeeze them in there anyway. It won't be a good thing you would build using that methodology. So, many large organizations in Sweden today are in multi-year agile transformation. It's ongoing and have been doing so for a while. And there are some key issues that needs to be addressed. And there are some good news too. For example, strategic alignment is of course crucial, but if you look at it, if you look at enterprise risk frameworks, strategic alignment, aligning to strategic objectives is a crucial thing there. At the same time, if you look at lean portfolio management frameworks, it says the same thing. So we are actually aligned here. And that's good news, I think. Another thing is that risk management need to be integrated into agile processes. And Mats touched on this too, that there is good news here as well, because there are plenty of places where you can put your risk activities or risk management activities into the agile ways of working. For example, if at this larger scale, the PI plannings, if you're using SAFe, or like system demos, 2 places where you can work with risk, but there are many more.
Okay, but I need to stop you there a little bit, because I also experienced joining an agile transformation that it's easy to forget the GRC roles. And when I was talking, I was actually responsible for a GRC function. And I was talking to an agile coach consultant that was supposed to help the company in starting the transformation. And I talked to him about risk management and risk analysis, how we could capture this in the agile ways of working. And he said, okay, but it's already into the SAFe framework. So I attended a PI planning, and what I saw, what they meant about risk analysis was about identifying obstacles in the increment and not actually identifying risks that could hit the company. But I think it's really important to integrate GRC into the ways of working, because otherwise it will be lacking.
Yeah, so you were looking for this, but you got this.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And also, I need to mention a little bit about integration. It's many large companies are really good in establishing a lot of steering documents and routine descriptions and templates, but they are performed in silos. So how could you integrate this into the agile steps? Also vice versa. You have the agile playbooks. How can you integrate GRC steps into that?
Yeah, here we have a gap for sure. Because
Yeah.
if you look at the modern ways of working for system development and even how you plan things and actually run things, it's a gold mine for work like that, because there are plenty of data in the process. But if you come from that world, you have that structure and you like it, you want to keep it, but you're not looking for what you can do instead. And there we have job. So for those of you that work as consultants, here is something you can address for sure.
I will.
Yeah, that's us. Okay, so it looks like that we have some work to do in this space. for sure.
Definitely.
So let's move on.
Okay, compliance. Compliance is all about how your organization applies to standards and regulations.
So, but how hard can that be? If you actually read the regulations, I don't know how often you do that. I have actually tried a few times, and if you read them, they're pretty good reading actually, because they are pretty agnostic and customer focused. So it has struck my mind that probably we can put this into a team of good developers, and they can figure it out and write their own requirements and everything. So it shouldn't be that complicated. But we come from a traditional world. So way back, before we had all the other stuff. But it's not a thing of the past. We still have this mindset in a large part of the organization. This is how it used to look. We have the classic waterfall model, right? And it's stuck in the walls at a lot of companies. It's really good, actually, because it had clear and defined stages.
Yes. And I would say that the structured model makes it really easy for us from the GRC perspective to plan ahead.
Yeah, and another good thing is that you had tons of documentation coming out in each and every one of these steps.
Yeah, and a thorough documentation is really good for GRC, because then I can read through and give all my advice into the documentation.
Yeah, and the third great thing about the traditional ways of working with that, for some reason way back, you could predict the future. You can make a plan 1 year, 2 years, 3 years ahead of what was going to happen. Wasn't that good too?
Yeah, because then I can address my compliance issues in ahead.
Yeah.
That I really
Why did we lose that ability?
Yeah.
That's sorry. Yeah. So as a compliance expert, I can imagine that the new way of working might look like a jungle. It's kind of confusing, I would say.
Yeah.
But if we break it down, there are a few things that we need to understand and adapt to. Yeah, we have seen this 8 before, right? So we don't have that waterfall anymore, those clearly defined stages. Instead, we have this continuous delivery. Brian talked about it too, with the shorter release cycles. And that we have to adapt to. If we can learn to live with that, then the life will be much easier. When it comes to documentation, it's not that documentation is lacking, but it's not those binders anymore, or digital binders, you know what I mean. It's much more fragmented than it used to be. And the same thing with planning. Yeah, we don't have these really nice Gantt charts spanning a number of years, but there are objectives, and there are clear, often at least, clearly defined goals of what we are doing. And there you can find things that you can use to do this work, for sure.
Okay, so today IT and the business are dancing together, or at least trying to dance. But can it be that compliance or legal experts must be invited? I think or believe that lean, agile, and compliance must coexist and be integrated in the regular workflow.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Doesn't look like the simplest thing to do, dancing tango with 3 people involved, but probably needed to actually succeed in this world.
Yeah.
So time is running. We need to wrap this up for sure. So some things that we want you to take with you from this session. First, some stuff to keep in mind. It sounds almost stupid, the customer thing, customer first, and the flow of value. But it's so easy to say, but so hard to keep that mindset in everything you do when you work. But don't be one of those guys that do that. Try to keep that in mind. And then embrace change. I don't think we have anything, there is no other way to go. Just think of the whole AI thing that's happening right now. We can joke about all the chat GPT stuff that people is writing on LinkedIn, but it's reality. It will really, really change a lot of things really fast. So for those companies that won't keep up with that, I don't want to be one of those companies for sure.
Okay, let's look into what not to do. As you probably understand, see one thing from one perspective. I think it's really important to see from both and understand both perspectives or different perspectives in an agile transformation. And also one takeaway for large organizations doing an agile transformation, don't think that your organization is a startup.
We've seen many examples of that, like large organizations that want to be like an early version of Spotify. And that's not the right way to go, because you are not the early version of Spotify. That's a complete other story.
No, exactly. And the third one, try to hold on to things for the wrong reasons. Then you can end up, for example, in retrofit controls that doesn't mitigate the actual risks.
So what should we do then?
Yeah, as we said, it takes 3 to tango. We need to build awareness and training for the whole organization, and it's ongoing. We don't want to avoid risk, but we want to limit it to the right level.
Yeah, and it's a funny thing. If you read the original Agile Manifesto, it says that you should not focus on tools and technologies. But I would say 2023, forget about that. We need to be modern here and do that. There's so much good stuff out there, and it's already installed and implemented in your organization. So use those to achieve great things in this area, this space, to close the gap. And finally, measure things. If you want to be better at this stuff, try to find objectives and measure against them. It will be much more fun, and you will probably succeed much faster.